If you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you probably know that the series often drew on classic films. For instance, one episode was a tribute to Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. And the Zillo-Beast arc was an homage to both Godzilla and King Kong. Maybe you've even heard how the Malevolence arc was based on the film and real World War II event, Sink the Bismarck. But you might be surprised to learn that the majority of Clone Wars episodes were heavily influenced by dozens of classic and obscure films. Sometimes these influences take the form of simple homages, but in other cases, a Clone Wars episode will directly imitate another film's plot and even match specific shots. Star Wars has always incorporated elements of classic movies, and The Clone Wars was no different. Studying these movies was part of the Clone Wars team's homework.
Definitely watching a lot of movies. I can't stress that enough because we did a whole episode based on Notorious. We did a whole zombie style with the Geonosis. We did a Godzilla episode because you know I like Godzilla.
Many of the cinematic influences on the Clone Wars are war films, and World War II films in particular. Let's begin with an example from Season 1. The episode Storm over Ryloth takes its deceptive and memorable strategy from a 1957 World War II film, The Enemy Below, about a battle between an American warship and a German U-boat. In Storm over Ryloth, Anakin devises a plan to break a separatist blockade. He will crash an empty Republic battleship, the Defender, into the lead separatist battleship, taking out their commander in the process. Anakin reasons that the sacrifice of the Defender will not be that significant, as it was seriously damaged in the prior engagement. The Defender is duly evacuated, and Anakin pilots the empty, burning ship towards the Separatist ship, feigning a surrender. He then sets the Defender's engines to full power and crashes into the Separatist ship, bailing out in an escape pod at the last minute. An analogous strategy occurs at the conclusion of The Enemy Below. The American ship, the USS Haynes, is severely damaged by a torpedo from the German U-boat. The captain of the Haynes, Morrell, then comes up with a desperate last-ditch plan. First, he orders the crew to deliberately start fires on the deck of the Haynes. This deceives the German U-boat captain, von Stallberg, into thinking the Haynes is totally disabled, luring the submerged U-boat to the surface. Morrell then orders most of his crew to abandon ship. Morrell himself remains on board with a skeleton crew. Von Stallberg signals the Haynes, giving the American crew 5 minutes to evacuate before he will blow up what's left of their ship. Morrell signals back an acknowledgement, feigning surrender. But as the U-boat approaches, Morrell suddenly turns the Haynes, sets the engines ahead full, and rams the empty ship into the U-boat. Morrell bails out in a lifeboat, but not before valiantly saving von Stallberg and his wounded officer. Rather unlike Anakin.
I'll be going. Oh, you can still have my ship.
But Storm over Ryloth isn't the only Clone Wars episode to utilize The Enemy Below. Season 2's episode, Cat and Mouse, featuring Admiral Trench, is often said to be based on the 1990 Cold War submarine thriller The Hunt for Red October, about a Soviet submarine captain attempting to defect to the United States. But Cat and Mouse also draws from The Enemy Below. The Clone Wars reverses the roles of the two sides. The good guys are in the stealth ship, the bad guys in the standard battleship. Like Anakin and Admiral Trench, Captain Morrell and von Stallberg are skilled opponents, matching wits and playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. Interestingly, The Clone Wars was not the first science fiction TV show to emulate The Enemy Below. The original Star Trek TV series did it first, in its 1966 episode Balance of Terror, with the USS Enterprise in the role of the American destroyer, and a Romulan ship with a cloaking device as the U-boat.
If we can hold an unchanging position behind him, he might mistake us for a ghost echo on these heavy seas.
You and Mr. Sulu will match course and speed with the object on our sensors, exactly, move for move. I want him to think that we're a reflection.
He's a devil, Annie.
He's a sorcerer, that one.
So the Clone Wars episode Cat and Mouse not only references the enemy below, it also plays off of this Star Trek episode. In both Star Trek and the Clone Wars, the role of the U-boat is played by a prototype spaceship with an experimental cloaking device, and this ship must become visible in order to fire weapons.
Interesting how they became visible for just a moment.
Perhaps necessary when they use the weapon.
But clearly, Anakin's ship is superior. There's no plaster falling from the ceiling. As a side note, the second Star Trek film, The Wrath of Khan, is also known to have been inspired by The Enemy Below, with Captain Kirk and Khan matching wits, just like Captain Morrell and von Stallberg, and just like Anakin and Trench. The Clone Wars Season 1 also contains the Malevolence Arc, which bears many similarities to both the 1960 British World War II film Sink the Bismarck and the real historical hunt for and sinking of the German battleship Bismarck, which the film depicts. Both the Malevolence and the Bismarck are expensive ships with cutting-edge engineering, the pride of the fleet. Both ships are elusive and their destruction is a priority, leading to a massive search effort. The Clone Wars arc starts off with the Malevolence destroying several Republic cruisers, just as the Bismarck starts its voyage with the sinking of the British battlecruiser Hood. Republic Y-wings torpedo the Malevolence, disabling the hyperdrive and preventing it from escaping, while the Bismarck suffers rudder damage from torpedo bombers, leaving it unable to maneuver and rendering it vulnerable to further attack. Both the Malevolence and the Bismarck are subsequently destroyed while trying to escape. Then there's Season 3's Citadel arc, involving a mission to infiltrate the Separatist-controlled fortress known as the Citadel and rescue a prisoner, Jedi General Peel. This arc has the same premise as Where Eagles Dare, a 1968 World War II film starring Richard Burton as Major Smith and Clint Eastwood as Lieutenant Schaefer. In this film, a team of commandos is sent to rescue American Brigadier General George Carnaby, who has been captured by the Germans and is being held in Schloss Adler, a mountaintop fortress in Bavaria. Like the Citadel, Schloss Adler is nearly impenetrable.
Schloss Adler is inaccessible and impregnable.
The Citadel is their most isolated and impenetrable detention facility.
While the Citadel is protected by electromines, Schloss Adler is surrounded by an electrified fence.
I doubt if that one can be climbed. It's probably got around 3,000 volts running through it.
Electromines. And we hit one of those, the mission's over.
Like Jedi General Peel, who possesses invaluable intel regarding the Nexus hyperspace route, the captured General Carnaby has crucial information on the planned Allied invasion of Europe and must be rescued before the intel is tortured out of him.
What is important is that we get him out before he talks.
The Clone Wars strike team is dropped near the Citadel via a shuttle posing as a supply ship, accompanied by reprogrammed battle droids, while the Allied commando team parachutes in from a plane near Schloss Adler, disguised as German soldiers. The all-male commando team receives assistance from British agent Mary Ellison, whose presence on their plane was unknown to all except Major Smith.
I nearly froze to death in that damn plane.
Just as Ahsoka secretly stows away on the Citadel strike team's shuttle, surprising Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the clones upon their arrival. The Allied commandos get captured by the Germans and are split into two groups, one of which escapes and continues on the mission. Similar to how the Citadel team divides into two groups, one led by Anakin and the other by Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's group gets captured. In both the Clone Wars and Where Eagles Dare, the team gains access to the fortress by scaling a cliff, and any attempt at stealth ends when an alarm is eventually triggered and the whole garrison is after them. They radio for extraction, exit the fortress by rappelling back down a cliff, and fight their way to the extraction point where a plane takes them out under enemy fire. Now, Where Eagles Dare involves quite a bit of deception and espionage, centered around uncovering traitors in MI6. Although it's not quite the same, the Citadel arc hits on a similar idea with its Jedi versus Republic divided loyalties theme, highlighted by the conversations between Anakin and Tarkin. And one more thing about this Citadel arc. The plot device about the two characters, Peel and Tarkin, each having half of the important intel and the intel is useless without both parts, that doesn't come from Where Eagles Dare. But it was used in another movie starring Clint Eastwood, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, in which the Eastwood character, the Good, and Tuco, the Ugly, each have half of the location of a stash of buried gold. And of course, Angel Eyes, the Bad, was the basis of the character of Cad Bane in the Clone Wars. Then there's the Umbara arc, with Jedi General Krell, whose brutal command causes dissension and rebellion in the clone ranks. This arc is sometimes compared to the 1979 Vietnam War film Apocalypse Now. And this influence makes sense because George Lucas was originally slated to direct this film. But Lucas shifted his attention to Star Wars, and Francis Ford Coppola ended up as director and producer of Apocalypse Now. The film centers around a mission to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, an insane rogue officer comparable to General Krell. The settings are similar as well. Apocalypse Now takes place deep in the jungles of Vietnam and Cambodia, while Umbara is a dark and hostile jungle planet. The Umbara arc even has an airstrike on a forested ridge that resembles a famous Apocalypse Now scene. I guess Kilgore isn't the only one who loves the smell of napalm in the morning. However, I would argue that the primary film influence on the Umbara arc is not Apocalypse Now, but rather Paths of Glory, Stanley Kubrick's famous 1957 film about World War I. In Paths of Glory, General Moreau tasks his French troops with an impossible challenge, the crossing of no man's land to take a German position called the Anthill. Moreau boasts of his need to be in the midst of the action, but in reality he remains a safe distance from the front lines, much like Krell.
General Skywalker is usually leading his men up in the front, not bringing up the rear like General Krell.
Moreau expects high casualties in the Anthill assault, but this does not dissuade him.
More than half my men will be killed. Yes, it's a terrible price to pay, Colonel.
Like Captain Rex, Colonel Dax obeys his general's orders, but has reservations regarding his strategy. Moreau threatens to relieve Dax of command, as does Krell with Rex.
Naturally, I don't want to relieve you, but I must have your enthusiastic support.
You will launch a full forward strike immediately, or you will be relieved of duty.
When the first wave of the attack on the Anthill is unsuccessful, a company of French troops refuses to advance. Moreau then orders his artillery to fire on his own men to force them out of their trenches and into battle. A friendly fire situation, similar to Krell intentionally pitting the clones against one another. The Anthill attack fails completely, and Moreau orders 3 soldiers to be court-martialed for cowardice. Similar to the 3 clones that disobey Krell, though only 2 of them survive to be court-martialed. Dax unsuccessfully attempts to take the blame in place of these soldiers, much like Captain Rex.
Well, if it's an example you want, then take me. The logical choice is the officer most responsible for the attack.
The order to attack the cargo vessel was mine.
The 3 French soldiers, one of whom is gravely injured, are found guilty and sent before a firing squad, just like the 2 surviving clones. As an aside, the Umbara arc wasn't the first time that Paths of Glory influenced a George Lucas TV show. The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles had a similar story about French troops defying a ruthless commanding officer. In an episode about World War I's Battle of Verdun, Indy is a courier in the French army. When a merciless general tasks Indy with delivering an order that will send a large number of troops to certain death, Indy burns the order. You're probably not surprised that war movies had such a heavy influence on the Clone Wars. But what about other genres, like, say, horror? Well, Season 1 of the Clone Wars contains a 2-episode arc about the Blue Shadow virus, a deadly bioweapon developed in a secret lab on Naboo. And while this arc uses some common tropes, like the German mad scientist creating life a la Victor Frankenstein,
it's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
The plot also bears a striking resemblance to Warning Sign, a little-known 1985 science fiction horror film. At first glance, it might seem odd that the Clone Wars would draw on such an obscure movie. But Warning Sign's director, Hal Barwood, was a USC classmate of George Lucas and worked as an effects animator on Lucas's THX 1138. Barwood went on to join LucasArts, working on video games such as Rebel Assault 2 and several Indiana Jones titles. And Warning Sign's writer, Matthew Robbins, was another USC graduate and George Lucas collaborator, making this film appropriate source material for the Clone Wars. In the first episode of the Blue Shadow Virus arc, Dr. Vindy's secret underground biological weapons lab is discovered near what appears to be some farmland or at least grazing land. The lab is raided and initially the virus is contained, but in the second episode the virus is released into the lab. Padme, Ahsoka, Jar Jar, and a number of clones remain sealed inside the lab to prevent the virus from spreading to the outside world. Similarly, in Warning Sign, a secret underground biological weapons lab, posing as an agricultural research facility in a rural area, has an accidental leak of a deadly bacteria, prompting a lockdown which seals all of the lab workers inside. The bioweapon in Warning Sign was developed by a Dr. Nielsen, and while he isn't a mad scientist like Dr. Vindy, Dr. Nielsen does go insane once he is infected.
Hey, he's a victim of his own bug, a regular Dr. Frankenstein.
I am creating life!
One of the workers trapped inside the facility is security officer Joni Morse. She's the wife of Cal Morse, the local sheriff. Cal is on the outside and communicates with Joni over radio, but he cannot get to her being locked out of the facility. Cal becomes increasingly alarmed for the safety of the trapped employees, and especially for his wife Joni.
You don't understand. My wife's in there.
Just as Anakin becomes increasingly panicked for the safety of Padme and the others who are trapped inside Dr. Vindy's lab.
My Padawan is trapped down there, and so is Padme.
What is going on down there? Are you all right?
Yes.
What is it? Joni, can you hear me? You all right?
Yes.
Padme may be lost, Anakin. Don't risk the mission trying to rescue her.
You gotta set your emotions aside and act like a professional.
At one point, Joni is electrocuted by the crazed infected employees, just as Padme is electrocuted by Dr. Vindy. Anakin and Obi-Wan go to Iego in search of an antidote for the Blue Shadow virus. While in Warning Sign, Cal and Dr. Fairchild go into the infected lab in search of an antitoxin. They are both protected by biohazard suits until the suits are ripped open in fights, exposing them to the contagion. Much as Padme and Jar Jar are both protected by biohazard suits, until Padme's suit becomes compromised during a battle, exposing her to the virus. At the end of Warning Sign, an antitoxin is found and the survivors leave the facility. But if you're still not quite convinced that the Clone Wars is intentionally referencing this particular movie, there's one more thing. Remember how the director and writer of Warning Sign were colleagues of George Lucas? Well, Warning Sign contains a reference to Star Wars. The code name of Warning Sign's secret biological weapons project is...
the Blue Harvest Group.
Blue Harvest Project.
Of course, Blue Harvest was also a code name for the film Return of the Jedi, released just 2 years before Warning Sign. And Blue Harvest was alleged to be an upcoming horror film, in order to keep Return of the Jedi's production on the down low. Return of the Jedi was called Blue Harvest. The horror film Warning Sign makes a Star Wars reference by calling its bioweapon Blue Harvest, and the Clone Wars makes a reciprocal reference to Warning Sign by calling its bioweapon the Blue Shadow Virus.
The circle is now complete.
Continuing with our horror theme, the Clone Wars episode The Box, in which Cad Bane and other bounty hunters are tested inside the deadly maze-like box, is a loose reference to the 1997 horror film Cube, in which a group of 5 random people are trapped inside a mysterious, giant, cube-shaped structure. Both share similar visuals, with rooms of glowing white panels, connected by corridors, and filled with traps. However, unlike The Box, Cube is much more focused on the interactions of the characters and human psychology. And here's an interesting sidebar about Cube. We can trace the origins of its premise back even farther because the film Cube was inspired in turn by the 1961 Twilight Zone episode 5 Characters in Search of an Exit, about a group of 5 random strangers trapped in a metal cylinder. Cube also resembles and was likely inspired by a 1-hour teleplay titled The Cube that aired on NBC in 1969. It's an incredibly experimental, philosophically loaded story about a man trapped in a white cube. And who was the writer of this strange teleplay? Rather surprisingly, it was Jim Henson, creator of The Muppets. But back to our main story. While we're talking about The Box, let's examine the larger Clone Wars story arc this episode is part of, in which Obi-Wan goes undercover as bounty hunter Rocco Hardeen. The arc begins with Obi-Wan surviving a sniper assassination attempt by Hardeen. The Jedi then capture Hardeen, and Obi-Wan assumes Hardeen's identity through a procedure that changes his face and voice. No one is let in on this plan outside of Yoda and Mace Windu. This story hits many of the same plot points as the 1997 action film Face Off, starring John Travolta as FBI agent Sean Archer and Nicolas Cage as terrorist Castor Troy. Like Obi-Wan and Hardeen, the film opens with Archer surviving a sniper assassination attempt by Castor. Archer later captures Castor, and the FBI learns that he has rigged up a massive bomb to explode in Los Angeles. In order to find out the location of the bomb, Archer goes undercover by taking on Castor's voice and appearance via an experimental facial transplant procedure and voice-changing technology. And only a few people in the FBI are in on Archer's secret mission.
Strictly off the books. You can't tell Lazaro, and you can't tell your wife.
You're asking me to put in the dark all the people that love me and trust me.
Posing as Castor, Archer enters a prison in an attempt to learn the location of the bomb from one of the inmates. Just as Obi-Wan enters a Republic jail posing as Hardeen in an effort to gather information on an upcoming assassination attempt on Chancellor Palpatine. In the mess hall, Archer Castor is accosted by a prisoner who has a grudge against Castor, and a fight ensues. Later on, Archer Castor breaks out of prison with the help of another inmate, similar to the way Boba Fett picks a fight with Obi-Wan Hardeen in the mess hall, which escalates into a massive prison break in which Obi-Wan, Cad Bane, and Moralo Eval escape. Like Obi-Wan, Archer is conflicted. He must play his role as Castor, but hesitates to kill others.
That's for hesitating during the escape.
Let's back up for a moment to the beginning of Face Off. When Castor attempts to assassinate Archer, Archer survives, but his son, Michael, is killed. So for the remainder of the film, Archer has a personal vendetta against Castor. The Clone Wars keeps this revenge element, but twists it around. When Obi-Wan survives the assassination attempt by Hardeen, Anakin believes that Obi-Wan is really dead, and vengefully pursues Hardeen throughout the story arc. At one point, Anakin forces down the ship containing Obi-Wan Hardeen in a sequence that mimics a scene in Face Off, where Archer uses a helicopter to force down Castor's plane. And remember this fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan Hardeen? Yeah, if you also thought that knee to the groin shot really stood out, that's because it's matching a shot from a fight in Face Off between Archer and Castor. By the way, if you're thinking that a movie starring John Travolta and Nicolas Cage is a really strange reference for the Clone Wars, Nicolas Cage is a nephew of filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, a mentor and good friend of George Lucas. Now, what about Westerns? The Clone Wars episode Bounty certainly fits the genre. In this story, Ventress and a group of bounty hunters are hired to deliver a mysterious cargo via subtram to Otua Blank, a despotic ruler. The cargo turns out to be a young woman named Pluma, who is to be forcibly wed to Otua. This episode's plot is likely a spin on the 1966 film The Professionals, in which rancher John Grant hires 4 mercenaries to rescue his kidnapped wife Maria from a bandit and Mexican revolutionary named Raza. But when the mercenaries find Maria, they discover that Grant lied about the kidnapping. Maria ran away. Like Otua, who takes Pluma as his bride against her will, Grant had forced Maria into an arranged marriage. Maria escaped Grant and willingly went to Raza, her lover.
Amigo, we've been had.
But this revelation doesn't matter to the 4 mercenaries who intend to finish the job and collect their pay anyway, much like the Clone Wars bounty hunters.
It doesn't matter. Tie them down, and let's finish this job.
The mercenaries grab Maria from Raza's camp and hop on a train. Raza and his gang of bandits pursue the train on horseback, just as a group of raiders led by Pluma's brother chase the sub-tram in Bounty. Though unlike Bounty, the train sequence in The Professionals is fairly brief, as the mercenaries ditch the train and continue on horseback. On their way back to Grant, one of the mercenaries, Dulworth, begins to have second thoughts. Even though Dulworth claims to be a cold-hearted mercenary who is only interested in money, he and Raza had once fought together in the Mexican Revolution.
You laugh, but you believed in the revolution once. What else inspired you to fight for us?
At the end of the film, Dulworth and the other mercenaries decide to let Maria escape with Raza. While in Bounty, Ventress has a similar change of heart after a conversation with Pluma.
I never asked to be ripped away from my home. You'll never know what it's like.
I wish I didn't, but I do.
And at the end of the episode, Ventress lets Pluma escape with her brother. Next, we have the 4-part Geonosis Arc, which is something of a mashup of several films. Much of the structure of the Geonosis invasion is based on the real invasion of Normandy, or D-Day, in World War II. In both cases, resistance is overwhelming, and airborne troops are scattered in the wrong drop zones. The large metal barriers that impede the progress of the Republic tanks equate to the metal hedgehogs used on the beaches of Normandy. And the Republic gunships coming in hot are much like the Higgins boats used for Normandy's amphibious landings. Unsurprisingly, much of the first episode, Landing at Point Rain, was cut together using footage from several famous war movies.
Landing at Point Rain was at first a total disaster, and George, Jason Tucker, and I sat in Avid for 2 days recutting that episode with live action footage. George had Battle of the Bulge, The Four Feathers, Battle over Britain, and we took a bunch of stock footage and footage from movies that he had and literally cut that episode together out of live action footage.
But in addition to these war film influences, much of the plot of this Geonosis arc has its roots in 1950s sci-fi. The planetary-wide invasion of Geonosis and the battle against the bugs is reminiscent of the invasion of the bug homeworld of Klendathu in Starship Troopers, the 1997 film based on science fiction author Robert A. Heinlein's 1959 novel. As in the invasion of Geonosis, the Federation in Starship Troopers underestimates the resistance that will be encountered on Klendathu, leading to higher-than-expected casualties. Like the Geonosians, the bugs of Klendathu live underground. The Federation in Starship Troopers suspects the existence of a brain bug and commences a search. Like the Geonosian Queen, this brain bug overlord is found in an underground tunnel system. albeit the Geonosian Queen's appearance is more similar to the Xenomorph Queen in Aliens than it is to Starship Troopers' brain bug. And like the mind-controlling parasitic Geonosian worms, the bugs in Starship Troopers can also control human minds.
Bug was in his brain, sir.
They get in your mind. Look, they did it to Farley. They got in his mind. They make you do things.
While the Geonosian Queen captures Luminara, the brain bug in Starship Troopers takes 2 human prisoners. In both cases, the captives are rescued by the main protagonists in the midst of a firefight, and the rescuers collapse the underground tunnel during the escape. But there's more. Fans of the Clone Wars often compare the mind-controlling parasites in the Geonosis Arc to the parasitic alien plant spores in The Body Snatchers, a 1954 novel by Jack Finney with multiple film adaptations. But The Body Snatchers was strongly influenced by an earlier 1951 Robert A. Heinlein novel, The Puppet Masters, about parasitic alien slugs that attach themselves to human hosts and take over their nervous systems. Now, Heinlein claimed that his novel was ripped off by a 1958 Roger Corman film called The Brain Eaters, which also featured parasitic alien slugs taking over their hosts' nervous systems. And I would argue that the title of the final Geonosis episode, The Brain Invaders, is a reference to this film, and that the Geonosis parasite story is not based on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as is commonly assumed, but rather, the entire Geonosis arc is a Robert A. Heinlein tribute, given the similarities to Starship Troopers, and the fact that the Geonosis parasites are bugs, like Heinlein's parasitic slugs, not plants, like the Body Snatchers' pod people. Furthermore, elements of the Geonosis episodes resemble an official 1994 film adaptation of Heinlein's The Puppet Masters, starring Donald Sutherland as CIA agent Andrew Nivens. At the start of this film, Andrew and his son Sam investigate a UFO crash. The UFO is carrying alien parasites. When the existence of these parasites is discovered, Sam is about to shoot one, but Andrew stops him as he wishes to capture and study it.
No, Sam! I want to take it back.
What? Anakin, no! What are you doing? I was going to study that!
In their dormant state, the parasites somewhat resemble the eggs of the Geonosian worms, and they are distributed by the infected in a similar fashion. The parasites attach to their human host's back, controlling their nervous system via a tentacle that goes into their brain. Victims of the parasite sometimes stand with mouth agape and audibly gasp and screech, much like those infected by Geonosian worms. Though there are many parasites, they consider themselves to be one singular organism, a hive mind.
How many are you?
One. Thoughts. My thoughts.
It's a sort of mind control, a hive mind. She thinks she can possess us.
The parasites infect many members of the police and military, similar to the way the clones are rapidly infected by the worms. When Sam's friend Alex is infected, he struggles to fight for control, just like Ahsoka's friend Barriss in the Clone Wars.
Help me! Alex, man, fight it! Fight it, man, fight it!
Barriss! It's not you! It's the creatures! Fight them! Kill me! Please.
Sam then blasts Alex in the face with some cold vapor from a pipe, a shot mirrored in the Clone Wars with Ahsoka and Barriss. This Geonosis arc also throws in a quick reference to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, a film which featured parasitic eel larvae that render their hosts susceptible to mind control.
You see, they're young. Enter through the ears.
Come now, the nose or the ear, which do you think will enter?
I think the nose.
Indeed, there are several Star Trek references scattered throughout the Clone Wars. One notable example occurs in the episode Voyage of Temptation, in which Obi-Wan has to determine which senator has smuggled assassin droids aboard a ship. This is accomplished by Obi-Wan holding one of the assassin droids near each of the suspect senators in turn. The droid acts aggressive towards everyone except Tal Merrick, revealing him to be the traitor. This scene is derived from one of the most famous episodes of the original Star Trek TV series, The Trouble with Tribbles. In this episode, a saboteur has poisoned a shipment of grain. The saboteur is discovered by way of the furry creatures known as Tribbles, who are docile and friendly towards everyone except Klingons. Near the end of the episode, Captain Kirk holds a pair of Tribbles up to a number of people in turn. When the Tribbles react aggressively towards a human, Captain Kirk discovers he is actually a Klingon in disguise and the saboteur. And while we're talking about sci-fi influences, what about the Clone Wars missing Padawan arc, in which Ahsoka is taken captive and dropped on a jungle planet to be hunted by Trandoshans? It's often said that this arc draws inspiration from the 1987 film Predator. There are several similarities. Both involve a monstrous alien hunting humans or humanoids for sport, both take place in a jungle environment, and both have a scene where the protagonist hides from the alien behind a log. But this Clone Wars arc could also be compared to the 1924 story that inspired Predator, The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell, which has been adapted into numerous movies over the last century. The first adaptation from 1932 is one of the most famous. In this version, a yacht is shipwrecked off the coast of South America, and the only survivor, Bob Rainsford, is stranded on a small jungle island. He finds shelter at the mansion of Count Zaroff, a hunter who claims to have found a new kind of animal, the most dangerous game. This animal turns out to be people, and Zaroff has a trophy room with mounted human heads, much like the Trandoshan trophy room in the Clone Wars arc. Zaroff stocks his island with shipwreck victims, which he has acquired by misdirecting ships, causing them to crash into the coral reefs surrounding the island, much as the Trandoshans stock their planet with shiploads of captured prisoners. Zaroff's mansion is actually a fortress like the Trandoshan base. The Trandoshans only hunt during the day, while Zaroff only hunts at night. And both Zaroff and the Trandoshan leader Garnak suffer a similar fall to their death. It's worth noting that the plot of The Most Dangerous Game has been endlessly adapted into films and episodes of television shows. It's shown up in everything from The Simpsons,
"You're here to participate in a hunt for the world's most dangerous game,"
to Gilligan's Island.
I've always wondered what it'd be like to track down and kill the most challenging of all games.
To Xena.
The Xena is the kind of prey I've searched for.
In fact, Predator was not even the first science fiction version of the story. In 1967, both Star Trek and Lost in Space did their own take on the trope, with Captain Kirk hunted for sport by Trelane in The Squire of Gothos, and Professor Robinson hunted by an alien in Hunter's Moon. Now, what about influences from Japanese films? Well, there are quite a few with a connection to the Clone Wars. The original 2008 film The Clone Wars, which acted as a kind of pilot for the TV series, was influenced by Shogun's Shadow, a 1989 samurai film. Henry Gilroy, one of the screenwriters on the Clone Wars movie, stated that Shogun's Shadow is one of his favorite movies, and it inspired the story of Jabba the Hutt's kidnapped son. In this film, the eldest son of a shogun is the target of assassination attempts as part of a succession war. 7 Ronin are hired to protect him. They set off for Edo Castle, carrying the shogun's son in a basket on their backs, all while evading their pursuers. Similar to Anakin and Ahsoka's trek to Jabba's palace, carrying Jabba's son in a backpack, pursued by the assassin Ventress, who has been ordered to kill the Huttlet. Both films also feature a dramatic one-on-one duel near the end. Going back to the Clone Wars TV show, the episode Bounty Hunters is an homage to Akira Kurosawa's famous film, The Seven Samurai. Like Kurosawa's samurai, a group of 7 bounty hunters and Jedi teach farmers to fight and defend their crop from thieves. They put up defensive fortifications, a scout is spotted and killed, and at the end of the episode, Anakin declares that it was the farmers who saved the village, which is similar to the line of dialogue that ends the Kurosawa film. But another Clone Wars episode, The Academy, is a very close adaptation of a somewhat less famous Kurosawa film, Sanjuro. In The Academy, Ahsoka travels to Mandalore to teach a group of students, one of whom is Duchess Satine's nephew, Corky. When the students uncover evidence of government corruption, they go to Satine with the information, but Satine tells them not to worry, and that they're too young to be getting involved. Unsatisfied with Satine's answer, the students then go to Prime Minister Almec for help, relaying the conversation they had with Satine. Almec tells the students he will meet with them that night. Ahsoka then warns the students not to act hastily, but the students ignore her advice and go to the meeting anyway, where they are ambushed by Mandalorian Secret Service, who attempt to arrest the students for treason. Ahsoka then appears and rescues the students. Similarly, at the start of Sanjuro, a group of young and inexperienced samurai have confronted Lord Chamberlain Mutsuta about corruption within their clan. Mutsuta is the uncle of one of the samurai, just as Satine is the aunt of Corky. And like Satine, Mutsuta has told the samurai that he is aware of the situation and warned them that people are not what they seem. Being unsatisfied with this answer, the samurai have gone to Superintendent Kikui and repeated Mutsuta's statements to him. Like Almec, Kikui has agreed to help, telling the samurai he will meet with them that night. Sanjuro, a wandering ronin, then appears and warns the samurai that they have been foolish. Mutsuta was the one to trust, not Kikui. But it is too late, and just like the students in the academy, the samurai are ambushed. Sanjuro saves them, just as Ahsoka saves the academy students. Since Mutsuta now knows of Kikui's corruption and betrayal, Kikui has Mutsuta arrested. Kikui wants to pin his crimes on Mutsuta and tries to force a false confession from him, but Mutsuta refuses, just as Almec has Satine arrested and attempts to force her to sign a false confession. Sanjuro then pretends to be on Kikui's side and offers his aid, pretending to help Kikui's forces capture the samurai, similar to the way Ahsoka pretends to help Almec by bringing him the students as prisoners. Sanjuro then devises a plan to rescue the captured Mutsuta and tells the samurai to wait for his signal. But there is a flaw in this plan, and Sanjuro gets captured himself. Just as Ahsoka tells the students to wait for her signal to rescue Satine, and then Ahsoka gets captured herself. But there's more. The title and basic premise of the Clone Wars episode Shadow Warrior are derived from Kurosawa's 1980 film Kagemusha, which literally translates to Shadow Warrior. In this film, Takeda Shingen, a daimyo or feudal lord, is shot and mortally wounded. To cover up Shingen's death, his generals get a thief who happens to closely resemble Shingen to impersonate him. The deception is highly successful. Both Shingen's own forces and the opposing factions are convinced that Shingen is still alive. Similarly, in the Clone Wars, the Gungan leader, Boss Leone, is stabbed and put out of action. Anakin then suggests that Jar Jar impersonate Leone, and this plan is shockingly successful. Evidently, there was quite an uncanny resemblance. Or maybe Jar Jar really was a Sith Lord after all.
You don't need to see his identification.
He's a Boss Leone. It is Boss Leone.
And there's one last Kurosawa film to discuss. Yes, that's right. A total of 4 Akira Kurosawa films made it into the Clone Wars. Much of the episode Lightsaber Lost is lifted from one of Kurosawa's noir films, Stray Dog. in which a young rookie cop named Murakami has his gun stolen by a pickpocket on a crowded bus. Murakami pursues the thief, but ultimately loses him. While in Lightsaber Lost, young Padawan Ahsoka has her lightsaber snatched in a crowded alleyway. Ahsoka chases the pickpocket, but he gets away. Murakami visits the police evidence archives in an attempt to identify the thief, and gets help in his investigation from Sato, a senior detective, just as Ahsoka consults the Jedi archives and is assisted by Master Sanube. Like Ahsoka and Sanube, Murakami is quite impatient to get his gun back, while Sato remains calm and collected. Both Murakami's gun and Ahsoka's lightsaber end up getting fenced, and both Murakami and Ahsoka are distraught when their stolen weapon is used in a crime.
It's in the hands of a killer. This is exactly what I was afraid of.
Murakami's gun is traced to a man named Yusa, who is involved with the Yakuza. The detectives interview Yusa's girlfriend Namiki, but she is unhelpful. Just as Ahsoka and Sanube trace the stolen lightsaber to an assassin named Nak Movers, and interview his girlfriend, Ione, who feigns innocence. At this point, the plot of Lightsaber Lost diverges from Stray Dog, but their conclusions are rather similar. At the end of Stray Dog, Murakami finds Yusa at a train station where Yusa intends to skip town with Namiki. Murakami chases Yusa, gets his stolen gun back, and takes Yusa into custody. While in Lightsaber Lost, Ahsoka eventually catches the two criminals, Ione and Cassie, at a train station where they are arrested and Ahsoka recovers her lightsaber. Our last Japanese film influence can be found in the two-part Zillobeast arc, which was obviously inspired by Godzilla. Like Godzilla, an ancient underwater creature awakened by nuclear weapons, the ancient Zillobeast had lived peacefully underground until the Republic drops a new superweapon bomb, which opens a sinkhole containing the beast. This bomb is basically a nuke. It even generates an EMP, like real nuclear explosions. Like the depth charges dropped on the newly awakened Godzilla in the original 1954 film, the Dugs attempt to kill the Zillobeast by dropping bombs into the sinkhole. The Republic later subdues the Zillobeast with tanks that strongly resemble the maser cannons of the Godzilla franchise. The Zillo arc also throws in quite a bit of King Kong. This particular influence likely comes from the writer of the second Zillo episode, Stephen Melching, whose great-grandfather helped build the giant King Kong hand prop that holds Fay Wray in the original 1933 film. Like Zillo, Kong is subdued and captured with the use of gas.
What do you think the marshal will say to these new gas bombs of yours?
Kong is then taken to New York City, which turns out to be a bad idea when he breaks free from his chains and goes on a rampage. Kong climbs to the top of the Empire State Building, where he is attacked by planes, much like Zillo atop Coruscant's Senate building. And we get the classic Godzilla King Kong style ending, where we're all made to feel very sad for the poor dying monster who's just killed thousands of people and wrecked a city. Now, how about the genre of film noir? The Clone Wars episode Corruption alludes to a classic example of film noir, The Third Man, which takes place in post-World War II Vienna, a city filled with black market racketeering. The story centers around the presumed death of Harry Lime, who stole penicillin from hospitals, diluted it, and sold it on the black market, resulting in numerous deaths. Among those affected are children with meningitis who were treated with the diluted penicillin. Much as the black marketeers in Corruption dilute tea with slabin, a toxic chemical that can be fatal. This tea is then consumed by schoolchildren who end up hospitalized. But while Corruption's premise and this hospital sequence are certainly an homage to the famous film, this episode does differ from The Third Man in other respects. And we can't talk about film noir without looking at some Alfred Hitchcock material. The Clone Wars episode Senate Spy is essentially a condensed 22-minute-long version of Hitchcock's 1946 feature film Notorious. The idea to do this particular movie as a Clone Wars episode came directly from Dave Filoni.
The Notorious one was unique in that was something that I came in and actually said to George, I said, George, I've been watching Notorious. I really love that movie. And would it be possible for us to put Anakin and Padme in that situation?
In Notorious, Devlin, an agent of the US government, falls in love with Alicia, who has been recruited as a spy. In this scene, the two discuss their dinner plans, much like Anakin and Padme at the beginning of Senate Spy.
Mind if I had dinner with you tonight?
I'd be delighted.
I brought dinner.
What you need here, I'll cook.
I thought you did 92.
5 blossom bread, my specialty.
You have a specialty?
I know how to make lots of things.
But like Anakin, Devlin is called away.
Prescott wants me over right away.
I have to report to the Jedi Council.
Alicia's mission is to spy on some Nazi chemical plant executives hiding out in Brazil after the end of World War II. Devlin is instructed by his superiors to persuade Alicia to seduce one particular executive, Alex Sebastian, just as the Jedi Council instructs Anakin to persuade Padme to spy on Clovis and his separatist business associates. Like Anakin, Devlin objects to this mission. Devlin's superiors then inform him that Alicia and Sebastian were once in a romantic relationship, just like Padme and Clovis.
Oh, yes. He was once in love with her.
I didn't know that.
Alicia meets up with Sebastian, and they have dinner together, like Padme and Clovis. Sebastian then invites Alicia to a dinner party at his house, where Alicia meets Devlin's business acquaintances. Just as Clovis invites Padme to his home on Scipio, where she meets his separatist business associates, and they all have dinner. Later on, Alicia steals a key to the cellar. When Sebastian is about to find the key in Alicia's hand, Alicia throws her arms around him, letting the key drop to the ground. Exactly matched by a scene in Senate Spy, where Padme steals a hologram disc, then embraces Clovis and drops the disc behind his back. Alicia and Devlin then infiltrate the cellar and discover Sebastian's secret, wine bottles filled with uranium ore, just as Padme finds Clovis's secret plans for a new weapons factory. When Sebastian later realizes Alicia is a spy, he decides to poison her. Alicia falls ill and collapses, just like Padme, who was poisoned by Lot Dodd. Like Anakin, Devlin comes to the rescue, helping Alicia down a large staircase accompanied by Sebastian in a shot that is duplicated in Senate Spy with Anakin carrying Padme accompanied by Clovis. Sebastian begs Devlin and Alicia to take him with them. Like Clovis, Sebastian knows his associates will kill him when they find out that Alicia was a spy. But Devlin refuses, leaving Sebastian to his doom. Just as Anakin leaves Clovis to his fate at the end of Senate Spy. Like Clovis, Sebastian walks slowly back towards his compatriots in the last shot of the film. Of all our film comparisons, this is certainly the most exact. But Notorious isn't the only connection between Alfred Hitchcock and the Clone Wars. Each episode title and the dramatic 4-part conclusion to the Clone Wars Season 5 directly references a Hitchcock film, meaning the prize for most films by the same director used in the Clone Wars goes not to Akira Kurosawa, but to Alfred Hitchcock, with 5 total films forming the basis of 5 different Clone Wars episodes. The first episode in the Clone Wars Season 5 conclusion, Sabotage, is based on a 1936 Hitchcock film by the same name. While the Clone Wars episode centers around the search for Jakar, a terrorist who has bombed the hangar bay of the Jedi Temple, the Hitchcock movie involves a search for terrorists planning a series of attacks in London. The film opens with an act of sabotage by one Carl Verloc, who has put sand into the bearings of an electrical generator, causing a blackout. We then see Verloc wash off the evidence of the sand in a sink. A parallel to this scene occurs in the Clone Wars, when Anakin and Ahsoka discover traces of nanodroids used in the Jedi Temple attack in the sink at Jakar's home. Verloc runs a movie theater, and like Jakar, he doesn't make much money.
It's hard to make a one-man business pay these days.
I would have thought working for the Jedi paid better.
Scotland Yard suspects that Verloc is the saboteur and that his wife might be complicit, just as Anakin and Ahsoka begin to suspect that Jakar's wife Letta might have been involved in the temple bombing. Both Letta and Mrs. Verloc insist that their husbands would never do such a thing.
You have no idea what that business was.
Whatever it was, I'm sure my husband hasn't done anything wrong.
Jakar would never do anything like this.
Verloc's fellow conspirators then give him a parcel containing a time bomb, intended to blow up a London Underground station. In other words, the target is part of the transportation system, just like the hangar bay of the Jedi Temple. Verloc entrusts the package with the bomb to Stevie, a young boy. Verloc tells Stevie that the package only contains some camera projector parts in need of repair. He instructs Stevie to leave the parcel at the underground station. Like Jakar, who is an unwitting carrier of the nanodroids, Stevie is now unknowingly carrying the bomb, and like Jakar, the bomb kills Stevie when it goes off. At the end of the Clone Wars episode, Letta is revealed to be the true perpetrator of the bombing, and therefore she is the cause of her husband's death. And while Mrs. Verloc is innocent of the London bombing, she does end up killing her husband at the end of the film. You might think the title of the second episode in the Clone Wars Ahsoka arc, The Jedi Who Knew Too Much, is an obvious reference to Hitchcock's famous 1956 film, The Man Who Knew Too Much, starring James Stewart and Doris Day. However, the reference is likely to an earlier, lesser-known Hitchcock film by the same name, as The Jedi Who Knew Too Much bears a slightly closer resemblance to this earlier 1934 version. In this film, a British couple, Bob and Jill, and their daughter Betty, are on a trip in Switzerland. They meet a man named Bernard, who is unexpectedly shot through a window. Before he dies, Bernard tells Jill to find a note hidden in his room and bring it to the British consul. Jill tells Bob, who goes to Bernard's room and finds the note, which contains information on a planned assassination. Now, The Jedi Who Knew Too Much and The Man Who Knew Too Much aren't nearly as similar as our previous Hitchcock comparisons. However, a few elements of their plots are somewhat related. Like Bernard and Jill, Letta is going to disclose a secret to Ahsoka, the identity of a Jedi behind the temple bombing. Except Letta dies before she can do so, force-choked by an unseen person outside the room, just as Bernard is shot through a window by someone outside and out of view. In the Hitchcock film, Bob and Jill then receive a message. Their daughter Betty has been kidnapped, and they must remain silent if they ever want to see her again. The couple are stricken and refuse to give the police any information, fearing for Betty's life. Bob then goes out in search of Betty. Again, though the comparison is not exact, Betty's situation is a little bit like Ahsoka's. While Betty is held by kidnappers, Ahsoka is imprisoned in a Republic jail. Like Betty's parents, Anakin fears for Ahsoka's safety, and he is something of a father figure to her. And just as Bob tracks down Betty, Anakin tracks down Ahsoka. Moving on, our third Clone Wars episode in this arc, To Catch a Jedi, features Ahsoka on the run for a crime she didn't commit. The title is a reference to Hitchcock's 1955 film, To Catch a Thief, which stars Cary Grant as Roby, a retired jewel thief who is falsely believed to have committed a recent string of burglaries. Like Ahsoka, a fugitive looking for the real Jedi who committed the temple bombing, Roby is on the run, attempting to find the real jewel thief in order to clear his name. And like Ahsoka, almost no one believes in Roby's innocence.
You don't think I'm responsible for all those recent robberies?
I think so, yes.
In the end, the real thieves are revealed to be old friends of Roby's. a surprise twist that anticipates the ending of our next and last Season 5 Clone Wars episode, The Wrong Jedi. This final Hitchcock homage is to his 1956 film, The Wrong Man, starring Henry Fonda as Manny Balistrero. Like Ahsoka, Manny is accused of a crime he didn't commit, and even though it is only a case of mistaken identity, not an intentional frame-up, the evidence against him is so overwhelming that it appears certain Manny will be found guilty. At the end, the real robber is caught and Manny is exonerated, as Ahsoka is exonerated after Barriss confesses to the temple bombing at the end of The Wrong Jedi. Aside from the title and general premise, however, the Clone Wars episode is rather different from the Hitchcock film. We've now seen how each of the 4 episodes in this Season 5 finale references an Alfred Hitchcock movie. But this story arc also resembles an entirely different film, the 1993 action thriller The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford as Dr. Kimball. Like Ahsoka, Dr. Kimball is falsely accused of murder, put on trial, and can receive a death sentence.
I ask the court that the full extent of the law be brought down upon you. Penalty of death.
Kimball is found guilty and sent to death row. Initially, Kimball doesn't plan to escape, until he's given an opportunity when he gets caught up in a prison break on a bus. Then, Kimball decides to go on the run. Similar to the way Ahsoka decides to become a fugitive when a keycard is left outside her Republic prison cell, presenting her with the chance to break out. In both cases, a dramatic chase ensues. Kimball reaches a dam, goes down a gutter, and runs through the dam's drain pipes with the police close behind, just as Ahsoka is pursued by Anakin and the clones through a system of water pipes. Kimball and Ahsoka assert their innocence.
I didn't kill my wife!
I'm not guilty!
And both get cornered by their lead pursuer at the end of a pipe. Both Ahsoka and Kimball jump from the end of the pipe to escape capture, then begin the search for the real killer. At one point, Kimball is identified aboard a train. A fight and another chase sequence follows. While on the run, Kimball phones his friend Dr. Nichols, informing him of his progress in tracking down the real killer. But at the end, Nichols turns out to be not the murderer himself, but the mastermind behind the murder. Just as Ahsoka phones Barriss for help, feeding her information on her location and findings, believing Barriss to be a friend, only to discover that Barriss is the mastermind behind the bombing of the Jedi Temple. Let's wrap up our film comparisons with one last action movie that was the basis of the Clone Wars Season 1 finale, Hostage Crisis, where Cad Bane takes Padme and a group of other senators hostage, and it's up to Anakin to rescue them. And if you've never realized what movie this episode is from, you're probably going to kick yourself when you find out. It's Die Hard, starring Bruce Willis as New York cop John McClane. Much like Anakin and Padme, McClane and his wife Holly don't see much of each other due to their different careers on opposite sides of the country.
She had a good job, turned into a great career.
Now that meant she had to move here. Why'd you come with her, man? What's up?
Because I'm a New York cop.
McClane visits Holly at a party held by her employer, the Nakatomi Corporation, in an attempt to alleviate their strained relationship.
Yeah, it'll be like we're actually husband and wife, instead of senator and Jedi.
A group of terrorists then show up at the Nakatomi building and take all of the employees hostage, including Holly. Just as Bane and his crew of bounty hunters show up at the Senate building and take Padme and numerous other senators hostage. In both cases, all communication lines are cut and the buildings are sealed off, allowing no entrance or exit.
They cut off all communication with the outside. The Senate buildings have sealed themselves.
Like McClane, Anakin is in the building and fights back. But he doesn't have his lightsaber, making his chances against the bounty hunters about as good as those of lone cop McClane against the large group of heavily armed terrorists. Although considering Anakin is a Jedi, he puts up a pretty underwhelming fight compared to McClane. In Die Hard, the terrorist's goal is the theft of millions of dollars worth of bonds, but as a cover story, they demand the release of numerous prisoners.
The following people are to be released from their captors.
While in Hostage Crisis, Bane demands the release of Zero the Hutt from Republic Prison. Initially, McClane's identity is unknown to the terrorists, but it's almost given away when the terrorists' leader, Hans Gruber, notices Holly looking towards McClane's picture. Similar to the way Padme's glance towards Anakin gives his presence away to Bane. Both Anakin and McClane manage to get a message out.
This is General Skywalker. Chancellor Palpatine, can you hear me?
Mayday, mayday, anyone copying Channel 9?
The die-hard terrorists take the hostages to the building's roof, and like Bane, the terrorists claim they will let the hostages go once their demands are met. But in reality, the roof is rigged with explosives, and McClane gets the hostages down below the level of the blast just in time. Just as Anakin cuts through the floor to drop the Senator hostages to a level below the explosives. To top it all off, there's even a swing through a glass window near the end. We've now seen how numerous Clone Wars episodes were directly influenced by both famous and not-so-famous films, and this video is certainly not a comprehensive analysis. The number of films connected to the Clone Wars is staggering, and they're an integral part of what made the series so exceptional. Because the Clone Wars was more than a simple kids show. It dealt with mature themes like war, biological weapons, and political corruption, while constantly striving for cinematic quality. And much of the show's success in these areas can be attributed to its cinematic origins. So, should all of these film references be regarded as simple homages, like the Godzilla Zillo Beast arc, or the Seven Samurai tribute? Or do they sometimes take the appropriation aspect too far, as in Senate Spy and Notorious? Well, that's up to you.
A valid concern and one for you to puzzle out.
But here's something else to consider. Every movie that's referenced by the Clone Wars is notable in some way. Some are obscure titles that you may have never heard of before. It's like one giant list of film recommendations.
A lot of the smart filmmakers, they all know those movies. Yeah. And so I think if we can touch upon that in Clone Wars and some kid sees Kurosawa's name at the beginning of our film, Remember Kurosawa, that makes them go look it up.
So if you love the Clone Wars, consider checking out some of the great films that provided much of the foundation for the series.